Good evening, everybody. All right. You just got me for a sec before we bring the video live. And we are talking with Barrett Brown tonight. We are going to be talking about Pursuance, Project PM, and the IRC, and the Wiki, and all the other fun stuff being up and ready for people. So there'll be some cool announcements tonight and some places you can go and do things. So without further ado, here we go. And there's Barrett with an awesome angle actually on that camera. I think the last time I saw you with an angle like this on a camera, there was a cat on the wall behind you. What a scene that was. So how's England treating you?
Criticized to a degree that's even, pretty significant for someone coming from the U.S. That's rare in the world. So,
Yeah, I mean, I figured getting over there, you would definitely find the more interesting side of it as you started to kind of feel your way around and meet people and all that. 2012 again. Yes, it is, chat. Way back when. So Barrett's been working on all of his projects. They're all coming back together. There's a good group of people helping make it all happen. People providing, everything from hosting to time to just get things like 100 freaking wiki articles or 1,000 or whatever, copied, pasted, reformatted, and all the other fun stuff. So, what do you have for us?
so we have quite a bit this time. So Project PM essentially went defunct for most practical purposes after my arrest in late 2012. It still maintained a presence, still served its function. In fact, in an accelerated sense after my arrest, because it brought lots of attention to why I was being hit by the FBI in the first place, which was our investigations into things the FBI and DOJ were involved in some instances, and other instances which were very serious acts of extreme malfeasance on the part of the intelligence community and private intelligence actors, technologies and methodologies and phenomena that would come back to haunt the U.S. and Britain and much of the world since. The phenomenon of unpunished, sort of unlimited private state intelligence alliances directed at institutions of democracy, basic pillars of democracy, whether it be elections or activists or journalists. We have now, after so many years, restored the website that the FBI was knocking down doors over to begin with. We have restored it to its original, wiki, editable, addable, expanding state, whereby it can continue to become a repository and increasingly useful repository of information that is hard won, like hard obtained, and which has been, the state has itself,
Hard fought for.
made clear how useful it is, how important it is by virtue of how viciously it's come after us for maintaining it, presenting it. So that's back up. The IRC server, Internet Relay Chat server for collaboration, the same sort that we use for Project PM, as well as large portions of anonymous infrastructure back then when Operation Tunisia and so forth were going on. We've reestablished that. So we have a server called Murat that maintains Project PM and that ongoing effort, as well as two other projects we talked about before here. Project Hastings, which is a media reform, malfeasance monitoring project, very much like Project PM, as well as Project Swartz, which is a similar project to monitor and document and present information about individual FBI agents and informants and collaborators, as well as who target activists, as well as their equivalents in other countries and other police agencies. And then Pursuance itself, the nonprofit we have in order to build this more universal, more cohesive, useful framework for this kind of civic collaboration. That's also going to be based, the revamping of that is going to be based there as well. So this one server, IRC server, will it will be very akin to and have some of the same people as was present in 2011, 2012 when a lot of these amazing things happened. So we're essentially back in action in a way that we kind of haven't been for almost 10 years. And that's exciting. So we announced that yesterday, and we'll present the IRC information and so forth in this broadcast later on.
Yeah, so we'll give you guys, the domain to hit up. Is the Tor, the Onion link up too?
Yeah, so the tour's all set, and we have a guide that we'll also put out there that we've created, or rather created, showing exactly how to get on the IRC network for those who aren't familiar with it, and as well as how to get Tor running with it, which is actually very easy.
Yeah.
For those who aren't familiar, so we'll post a link in, and it has the address as well of the IRC.
Which where do I find those links so I can show them later, or will someone just can someone send them to me over on Signal or something?
Yeah, we'll do that.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we'll share all those links for everyone to do it. Maybe even one of the people in the chat might be one of the people already over in all those other places and can share them with people. But so today's an interesting day. I'm happy that we're kind of doing this today. It's in terms of like the internet existing in the way that it does right now. Today is both the 25th anniversary of Section 230 going in, and strange enough that they're on the same day, it is the 25th anniversary of John Perry Barlow and his declaration of the independence of cyberspace. And I thought it'd be cool to have you on for, all these wonderful, momentous anniversaries. We're coming up on almost a decade since I first reached out to you, the very first email I sent you. Getting close to that, too.
Those were exciting times. It was an exciting email to get. It's a lot of people have been kind of like, there's been this cycle in the last 4 or 5 years, maybe longer, of, the wondering of why did everything stop, and like how can it get revamped again, and why the iterations of things like Anonymous, why are they failing and or deserve to fail, like when will the cycle, if there's a cycle in any sense, or if there's when will the circumstances again arise whereby we can have something of that caliber in play again as we did in those years, and without going into like what it is that allows those things to be possible. We just happen to have a lot of things coalescing individually in the last couple of years. It's taken a lot of effort, and we have a lot of assistance from a great many people of different walks of life, including some of the old school activists from back then. And so this is a great time for those who know a lot of people who are interested potentially in solutions and being a part of solutions using proven methods. This is a great time to tell them that, hey, it's time to time again has once again come to push the ball forward and not just sit and wait and watch as things collapse. We have a great, with the Trump administration having ended, a great deal of the irregularity and sort of an alienness of that era, that being over. It allows us to go back to and refocus on, and get others to focus on the issues that were here all along, without all those dynamics of the kind of the understandably partisan, understandably defensive kind of dynamics that were going on among the establishment and mainstream. Those things, we can now go back and reform the media now and talk about the media's real problems, as opposed to it's the made up fantasy problems that it's been hearing about from the far right. And we can talk about the Beltway and the establishment and the U.S. foreign policy and domestic policy and all the things that were vastly nightmarish already, and in some cases got worse in the last administration. we can now do those things without all of this constant barrage of of collapse that we've seen in the last 4 years. This is a very important time for activists, I believe.
Yeah, it's taken a while. I mean, for a lot of people don't realize just how complicated it got as the man came after you and started shutting things down and started going after Project PM, especially going after its hosting, trying to get the domain even. Like, they literally tried to get the domain and didn't, the original one. And at some point, the whole site had to come down just to protect it so the database and everything could get into someone else's hands to get it off the server it was on, to make sure that we had offsite backups, everything else. There was a point in time when, with Project PM, for like 3 days during this just haywire kind of moment, I had the database sitting in a file, and I had all the other infos kind of just sitting on a drive here locally, and everyone else had gotten rid of their copies. The server was gone. The people who had run the server were unresponsive, very much to their, benefit. They needed to be unresponsive. They needed to go and sit out for a few minutes while the feds were looking for everyone. And like the amount of stuff that happened during that time period just to make sure we even still had this data was insane. I mean, it was not a fun couple weeks just fighting to make sure that we didn't lose everything and have to start over.
And we now know more about, so of course I knew the least because I was otherwise engaged
Yes.
after my arrest. But we now know more from documents and so forth, including the lawsuit that Kevin Gallagher did on the DOJ for their the things that they try to do with the website and the contributors and donors and so forth. We know a great deal more about how widespread and how irregular and unusual that process was. Not just that process, but the entirety of the campaign to prevent us from doing the things that to disrupt existing information and disrupt anything we might do after that. It was more involved than was evident back then. It was already pretty involved just from what we knew.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, one of the silver linings of all that is that a lot of some of the things that happened will not be repeated because,
now we know
it gets to a point where it's too much of a pattern, and a lot of the individual actors in the DOJ and so forth, FBI, that were involved in that, the kind that were willing to go that far and take those risks, which didn't seem like risks to them because they do a lot of these things all the time.
Right.
They are no longer willing to do that, and we actually have more of a mainstream kind of aura or infrastructure attached to us now to an extent that would make it remarkably harder, not just for oppression of that caliber, but for all the little detrimental things that can happen when you are doing something that is working and that is damaging to powerful interests. And there's media scrum and legal scrum whereby you can kind of scrape your knees. We are in a much more advantageous position, just in all. And I know it sounds very abstract, but just in so many ways, we are in an advantageous position vis-a-vis back then. And I'm excited in a way that I've not been excited, even though I've always been kind of cautiously optimistic. I'm excited in a way I haven't been for quite a while, since 2011, 2012.
So, when we talked last time, we told that audience a little about the different projects and kind of where the delineation is between them, like what each project is focused on. And so there's Project PM, there's Project Swartz, and there's Project Hastings. And then there's Pursuance as kind of this other overarching thing. So could you maybe kind of explain to the audience what each one of those is?
Sure. Let's start with these three projects, including Project PM, the one we've revitalized, the GSM project, to document intelligence contracting, intelligence, and particularly as is deployed against activists, that kind of thing. These are three fundamental projects in a couple ways. One, the way they're going to be organized and what they'll become, which is pursuances, this new form of collaborative entity. They're also fundamental in so much as that they document the three factors which are the greatest threats to activists and to journalists and researchers and NGOs, nonprofits, people trying to do good works around the world. They deal with the three kind of threats, the main threats that they face. on an ongoing basis. One is the again illicit law enforcement targeting of activism, which is of course in the U.S. and UK has been well documented to have gone unpunished and basically unlimited for decades and decades now. But then the less obvious threats, one of them being the intelligence sector, private intelligence sector, contracting firms that Bank of America goes to when they have a group that is protesting against them effectively, goes to have them sabotaged. Private intelligence firms oftentimes, staffed and run or invested in by former Army, former CIA, former State Department figures, and thus having, in addition to what the technology they have and the friendships they have, ongoing access to the state. That's the other main major threat. And then the third, Project Hastings, deals with media malfeasance, which I should go into a little bit more because it's very easy to envision a media reform or media auditing project and think of it in terms of what we've seen before, which is things like, on the left you have Media Matters. On the right, you have a couple of groups that are lesser known, but all just kind of goofy. And again, these Media Matters does a lot of important work, actually, particularly back in the early days of the blogosphere, in terms of just showing, like, look, there's demonstrably false thing this blogger is saying or this on this station. But they're limited, and they are ideological, even including when they should be. There are other ways of serving the function of trying to monitor and keep tabs on and improve, like hold the standards, the press. And the way we're approaching is very different from what you would have seen before, and it is a little bit more. It involves some processes that are designed such that they will not just only be somewhat relatively immune to abuse, but also extremely persuasive in terms of what it's trying to do when we look at the media. So we won't have stuff like, oh, this liberal mainstream pundit is talking about this issue and leaving out, like, this other consideration or factor that they should, even though that's a legitimate argument. Rather, we have a very delineated sort of series of categories of media malfeasance that are much less ambiguous, much easier to kind of pin down,
much less subjective.
Less subjective. And the way we go about presenting and digging into these things and giving those involved a chance to respond has been very meticulously kind of like just micro designed, such that it is it's hard to wriggle out of, to the extent that this project and its sort of protocols identify something as malfeasant. It's designed to get around the kind of ways that the traditional press has used, consciously or unconsciously, in order to protect itself from reform, protect itself from having to take its work seriously. And so a lot of that involves transparency and documentation and so forth. But anyways, on top of all that, there's Pursuance, which is this wider mechanism by which others will be able to do the kind of organizing and implementation of ideas and so forth that otherwise is limited to adventurer types or charismatic types or people who are lucky or in the right place at the right time or whatever. It's designed to get to provide a space with something very akin to Tinker Toys or Legos within that space by which you can build and design and grow, establish procedural, agile, self-organizing entities that are superbly fair in the way that they allow for self-organization. As in, it's something that it's very simple, but it can lead to very complex arrays of collaboration and workflow, organization, and democracy, process democracy, as we call it. And it also, the step-by-step manner in which it proceeds, and the extent to which it does not necessarily depend upon majority votes for all different decision-making. It uses more experimental kind of procedural methods. It deals with some of the drawbacks of democratic organizing, and some of the givens, some of the things that have like sort of just been assumed to be the right mechanisms for democracy as opposed to others. But most importantly, it allows others to take this set and build their own polities, their own communities and networks without deferring to us or anyone. It allows people with ideas to implement the idea or put the idea where it's very easily implementable by others. It's a way of allowing for several different groups to pursue the same idea in different ways. It just facilitates a lot of things that are possible and that are done to some extent, but it makes them vastly more doable, vastly more likely to be done. It takes a lot of the mundane efforts of organizing, like going to the building down the street and talking to this other NGO, going to conferences. It takes a lot of that stuff that happens anyway and makes it accessible to vastly more people and makes it vastly more likely to result in something meaningful.
Yeah, when I explained the initial kind of roots of Pursuance to people to get them to understand it, in a way that just will make the quickest sense, I think, if they already have an understanding of anonymous or any kind of really online organizing, even down to just someone who literally does their organizing by throwing up a Facebook event, right? Like any level of organizing, but more towards the anonymous, style of things. I always thought of Pursuance as it began as a way to distill down all that knowledge that we gained doing this early on of what worked and what didn't, and what obviously failed us and what led to wins, and into a system that would kind of hold people's hands through doing the stuff that we know worked, and allowing them to get more organized in ways that would function without the big problems we did run into, because those can be systematically removed, like you said, through process democracy. And so there's definitely a lot of interesting stuff going on there with Pursuance, and I think people are going to really get a lot out of it once they can start to access it.
Another thing I should mention is that, we have, we'll be introducing this huge number of other people, 2,700 people who have, people and entities and organizations in some cases that have signed up for Pursuance over the last couple of years. We're about to be actually bringing them in. Pursuance won't be built and ready, like in a sense that we're going to be okay with, that we're going to be happy with for quite a little bit longer.
It's hard work.
Talking about the rest of this year. In the meantime, what we have kind of been doing in general is getting people ready for it, having them build things or participate in things that are akin to Pursuances. People who in some cases have not been involved in organizing activism of this format or any format before, but who are ready now, getting them coalesced into things that will become Pursuances, that will become these individual entities, these civic organisms, and be integrated into that system. But there's a great deal of, obviously there's a great deal of preparation one can do and foundation building one can make pop off the way it needs to pop off. And so we've decided to try to do as much of that as we can, while we're also just waiting for the inevitable delays in getting software built that's going to be good enough for what it needs to do, since that takes time. So
yeah,
we are ready now. For those of you've been waiting, if you've kind of been, if you have, noticed the long absences and delays and all this stuff the last couple of years, that waiting is over, and we are now ready to integrate people into the stuff. So the IRC, like I said, is the main organizing platform for this for most people.
I have posted a link to the paste bin that describes how to get on, has the onion link and everything else in the chat for everyone. There is a question in the chat for you, and it is, are there any parallels between the projects you've mentioned and or Pursuance and WikiLeaks?
So not really. So WikiLeaks has a very specific, function of being an organization that you can come to with leaks and documents and stolen materials, hacked materials, whatever, and they will go through the business of collating it, making it available, dealing with all the issues that surround that, and then presenting it and trying to get the media to pay attention to it and try to make government, in some cases, legislators, reform bodies aware of it. These projects are all, they're very similar to my Project PM deal from 10 years back, which was just a crowdsourced research deal into sometimes similar materials, like the H.B. Gary emails that I went through with Project PM and Anonymous and a bunch of other people back in 2011 for us to discover these phenomenon, in some cases, individual government projects, and then expose them. The format we used of having a very kind of open, collaborative process just to dig through these things. That is very much what we're doing with these other two projects as well. Pursuance is different from all of them in so much as it is a framework for people to do their own work and organize their own work, and so it's something to create things like WikiLeaks. It's something to facilitate things like WikiLeaks. There's not much overlap between although Project PM, Project Hastings, and Project Swartz, each one do have a component, just as Project PM did, whereby there would always be looking for input, and sometimes those take the form of leaks. Oftentimes, it takes the form of tips, about something that it's already public. So it's very similar to the patterns that we've seen of efforts like this for quite a while. WikiLeaks is kind of its own thing. It has a very specific niche.
Thanks for the sub there, Dev Null, to Julianne, and thanks for putting the Discord in there again for my show and everyone involved. We're all over on the Discord. Everyone can join us there. We're there every day. We have a movie night every Sunday. It's fun times. With one of the things that I'd like to connect here is earlier you mentioned the stuff that Bank of America was doing, and that we all learned about thanks to email hacks, like the HB Gary hacks, like all this stuff that we know that we now can say very safely as fact. It's because things like HB Gary got taught lessons. Run a security company and then have that level of security. Yeah. I mean, for anyone who doesn't know, like, Barrett was there the same time I was, watching as about 5 minutes went by from when a group of hackers decided they wanted those emails to when they were downloading those emails. It was a fun night. It was a fun night, let me tell you. I was entertained the entire night.
Those were epic days.
They were. We need to have some more of those epic days.
Yeah, and they're very telling. Just the fact that thing could be done early on and without much forethought and without much organization. Of course, part of the effectiveness had to do with that lack of forethought and organization. It was very agile,
very fluid, very amorphous,
very self-confident and exuberant, and sometimes that's required to really push the ball forward, as it has been in the history of civil disobedience and reform and activism and
a lot of times you got to be angry, and at that point there was something we all wanted to see, and they had it, and we were going to get it. And it was a PDF document that he was about to give to the feds.
And he had been very aggressive. Aaron Barr, the CEO of this company, the former Air Force intelligence officer who ran this firm that was spying on us while we were assisting with the Arab Spring, before it was called that. It was obviously a situation in which they were dead to rights ethically, and became more so as we dug through other things they were doing. Anyway, so there's just a massive amount that's been learned since then. I mean, through those experiences and others, about what kind of things are being done to activists, and especially if they're effective, and to journalists who hit upon something that involves illicit power or corporate or state. There's so much that's been documented since then, and so much that's documented about how they do it and the procedures involved, who's involved, and how little they've been punished, and in some cases rewarded, and been allowed to go on and interfere in major elections in ways that also kind of, the story evaporates after a while, and everyone kind of forgets it, and the same firms like Palantir are just regarded once again as another company with an IPO. It's a sad narrative the more you know about it. It's very distressing to see it play out over and over again. It's also an important narrative from the standpoint of those who are focused on how we deal with this thing, because it does teach us how vulnerable these these entities and these powers and these institutions are, on the rare occasion when they get punched in the nose.
Yeah.
And so some of that narrative, as has been established with documents from a variety of sources and processes, including courts and further leaks and people coming forward with things, recordings. Again, the more you know about that, the more you understand that it's critical for whatever issue you're involved in, whichever issue that you consider to be most fundamental, maybe environmentalism or civil rights or whatever else. All to the extent that you are capable of, or just have potentially able to cause some real change, you are vulnerable to a very opaque, very insidious kind of reaction from states and power structures that has already been documented. That it's out there, but it does not result in real pushback on those occasions when it's exposed. So what you have to sort of calculate from all this is that, yeah, exactly. So what you have to conclude from all this is that if you think it matters, if you think civil society matters, and if you think empirical public consciousness and research and journalism matters, and if you think that citizens, if you think that public consent to its politics matters, and informed consent matters, then you have to be of the opinion that it is necessary to push back against these practices and against this apparatus. And you also be inclined towards looking at new ways of fundamentally revisiting how we go about doing that and everything else. And so when we have projects like these, all I ask is that anyone with any civic duty kind of in their system, that they take some time to look very carefully at what we're proposing, how we're organizing these things, what we've done in the past, using similar methods or even lesser methods and lesser circumstances,
less organized,
and just
definitely
see how much it makes sense to pursue these fundamental methods of restructuring things. It's absolutely necessary if we're going to go from being an audience to this baroque, just disgusting kind of deterioration of our civilization into something capable of formidably opposing this kind of degradation and establishing something else. There is a series of fundamental aspects that any solution has to have, and so we've tried to think very carefully about what those aspects are and what the solution is and why, and we're also very open for that reason to input and questions and criticisms. We've gone through a lot of those, and we've built up something that a lot of people walks of life who've come to this project and worked on it, whatever, agree is necessary and fundamental and worthwhile.
And if you want to actually join in and give some of that feedback, I'll paste it again in the chat there. That will get you to the IRC where everyone is. So that'll give you the instructions depending on your operating system. It'll tell you how to get to the address. It has the .onion Tor address to get to the server. The server's being run on private hardware. It is, again, behind Tor. It is really well set up and ready for this. So if anyone wants to come, take part, join. There are weekly meetings, the Murat meetings. When are those usually?
Those have been every week on Sunday at 8 London time or 8 UK time, Greenwich time, which
like 2
is
o'clock our time? 1 o'clock our time?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's 6 hours forward to either from Central or from East Coast.
Yeah.
So yeah, afternoon if you're in the U.S. Sunday afternoon. So and the Twitter account.
And they get tweeted out on the ProjectPM Twitter account.
Yeah, ProjectPM on Twitter, which it's nice to have access to Twitter once again,
right?
To some extent. So yeah, so you can follow that for updates on that, and again, so the IRC will play a huge role in this. Anyone is free to come to the IRC, encouraged to do so. Hang out, idle. We have guides there. We're there to answer questions and help explain to people how they can go about getting involved in any number of projects that will also be based on this IRC and later on Pursuance over the years to come. Or if you're interested in these 3 projects, of course, we'd love to have people involved in that as well. This kind of project, this kind of crowdsourced research project using a wiki and an IRC channel and just that worked extraordinarily well back in the day.
It is surprisingly good at speed, at organizing when you need to. One of the things I'll say for people, like we mentioned HB Gary earlier, when it came down to there being a channel of people who actually made first kind of action on the HB Gary op, there were, in the first 4 people, me and you were both in there, and then a few others showed up that we recognized. But then, by the time it was 8 people, I didn't know 4 of them. This was the first time we had, actually, we came together and then action. It was like that. And people didn't need to know each other. They just needed to know at least one of the other people here knew them. And we all just got moving. And by the end of the night, the channel had over 800 people in it. Shit was just going. It was a crazy weekend. But it was IRC and an easily editable wiki and a paste bin where people were throwing some stuff around too that made that all happen so damn quickly. We know what tools work for this type of organizing when it's needed fast. And turning that into a process for people so they don't have to figure all that out time and time again is important.
Absolutely, and having the infrastructure in place that allows them to best capitalize on what they produce there in these channels or amongst themselves. Having networks, by which to make sure some press see these things and can help to amplify them. Having networks by which to get them to NGOs in some cases and nonprofits and monitoring agencies. That's the other piece of the puzzle that, once again, we don't have to start from scratch here. And so there's a great deal we have planned already in terms of the other infrastructure that facilitates all of these new projects that others will start as well and ensures that, again, like you said, not everyone is having to build up an isolated kind of network or expertise array.
Come up with their own communications channels, come up with which pad are we using? Are we using Pirate Pad? Are we using RiseUp? Are we using Debian? There's 500 pads, and why? Are we using one of the encrypted ones? You know what? No. Use the one that's tied to all the other tools you already have. One of the bigger problems we always used to run into was at the time we would start, organizing, there would be 50 people who had done this a different way the week before. And so they'd all come in with their own tools that they'd kind of thrown together as their version of the toolkit. And so we'd all start posting stuff on different tools. And having that one thing that will just say, here's the tool for this, here's the tool for that, I think will speed this up a lot. Because one, the familiarity with where it is, what it is, and how it works will start to build up, And you won't have to memorize 500 different URLs to get to the various tools that might be in use.
Yeah, but it's very modular in so much as that, we have suggestions and answers for all these things and things available. But of course, there is some mixing and matching of individual pursuances down the line, of course, will, they'll have the basic kind of relationship, the kind of the building blocks for these things, and we'll have
pick and choose and put it together.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly, and you'll have something that is in some cases suggested as here are the best tools for this, but you'll be able to as is wanted, for individual projects use whatever, and Pursuance and all these other projects as well in a different way are intended to be used with existing structures. It's intended to be something like if you have an NGO or nonprofit or whatever, and you have a certain task management software, whatever like that, this is intended to be a supplement to that in that case. It's also intended to be the only thing you use in other cases for those who need that, who need a whole suite of area of space to work, ways to find people, so forth, tools. Collaborative methods. It's intended it's intended to always be worthwhile. It's that modular to whatever kind of organization, movements, whatever its politics are, whatever its inner procedures, already are. It's intended to accommodate whatever anyone needs in terms of another way of enhancing their ability to act. So
So
it's intersectional, I guess, if I'm using that term correct.
yeah. So chat, what do you got for questions? We've talked about kind of some of the stuff we wanted to talk about. Barrett, what is the URL for the new Project PM now that it's back up? Is it the same old domain?
No, I don't. Not yet. We have a URL that I will post, or someone else can post in the chat as well. It's not yet. It is not yet a
It's not permanent yet.
comprehensible. Yeah, exactly.
But whatever this is, we'll redirect to it when we get it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
All right, cool.
So we'll post that on the Project PM Twitter as well. Like we said earlier, that has all this stuff presentable. We'll post it in here as well.
Yep, and
Same
again,
with the IRC and all that.
on the weekends there are the video chat meetings where you guys are kind of working out a lot and talking to people, and then the IRC is where we want everyone to show up and actually join in. Where can the normal people find info on Facebook?
We don't have a Facebook account for Pursuance or any of these things. So Facebook is not really a great way. You can presumably search and find some stuff. My account was deleted by Facebook a few months ago after I released the material on my former prosecutor. The DOJ's senior counsel for the Internet Evidence Division released some stuff on her activities in Dallas, some of them criminal in nature, quite embarrassing. A few hours after I posted that, my Facebook account was removed without explanation, and so was the Twitter account of one of the victims who had come forward about this stuff. Anyway, so we no longer have a Facebook group presence for Pursuance or anything else. We used to. So Facebook is probably not the best place to find information on it. If you Google Pursuance, Project PM, you'll find articles about the histories of both those things, explaining kind of what they are in more detail, diagrams in some cases. There's a lot of video embeds. There's an Observer article. If you just look up Pursuance, Observer article, it's a great article about how Pursuance operates, and it's got a video embed of one of the talks I gave early on about how it works. So that's a great place to start.
I think it was more a leading question in that Spirit Warrior, 100% agree. I was just reading the question. I have come to terms with the fact that word is wrong on multiple levels. But anyways, I think the question itself was leading in that, there are a bunch of people over there who aren't going to find the other things. And so there needs to be something there for at least something that says, get off this damn site and go over here. Do you have any plans to find a way to get that made? I think there are enough people in the project that could set up a quick page, probably.
People could. The problem is that Facebook now, as of a few months ago, with the DOJ running this other gambit on us, is going to be actively there. Those things aren't going to last necessarily. So people are definitely encouraged to post links
instantly.
Yeah. So the best thing people do is they can post on their Facebook pages links to this broadcast or the articles about these things, or the other announcements. The formats of announcements we have, telling people to come to the IRC and all that. But we're not going to be trying to set up a Facebook presence simply because we just it's doesn't seem to be worth it.
I mean, I basically agree. I just I also agree with the fact that there are going to be a lot of people that's most of their online time, and it's a lot of the older crowd. So maybe something can be solved there. I'm not sure. That'll be a complicated one because they are actively attempting to keep it off the platform. So we'll have to see on that one. Maybe we're gonna have to yell at Zuck personally somehow.
People should definitely spread things on Facebook. It's just we just don't plan on at this point.
Yeah, every time Barrett attempts to use it, they ban him and it, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's been pretty wild with them, just like with Twitter. So,
So what else do we got, chat? What else do you want to hear about? You got Barrett here. Come on, give us something good. Ask him who that is in the background. Ask him if he's read all those books behind him. Come on, something.
This is a real odd, eclectic array of books.
Yeah.
As far as I can tell.
We have an entire shelf over there like that.
Dipped in.
Where is this Barrett? Where are you right now?
I'm in southwest England. Um, based in London now, but been in southwest England for a little while, and be a little bit while longer before we go back
Go back to London,
to London. Yes,
and then you're staying there now. You just you're
that
now
is
living in merry old England.
that is the plan.
Wow.
That
So
is the decision. Yes,
huh. Well, at least now when you run from the bobbies, they aren't gonna shoot you. They're just gonna
that's
catch up
right.
and then beat you with billy clubs.
Yeah, they don't seem to have billy clubs anymore, and there's not that many of them in London anymore. They seem to
Huh.
have run out of money. Even the Tories here don't fund the police. They just say they will, and then they
That's
don't do
weird.
it. So it really is. It's a weird, like I said, it's a weird country, man. It's very the opportunities here are very different. And there's just a world of possibility, frankly, the UK.
Uh, well, someone asks, any idea where Hastings' research was going before? And I'll say it as I believe it to be true. He was murdered. Um, I
I mean,
mean,
we know he was. Yeah, I mean, we know a couple of things that he was working on. One of which was a deal on Bremen, the CIA former CIA director, and then as well as my case, he was coming down to interview me. We spoke on the phone from the jail unit I was in a couple weeks before he died. And third thing was some of the stuff that Project PM had been investigating, including Ramos Coin. He had spoken to Kevin Gallagher of the Free Barrett Brown Group about that. Some of the other programs and projects that were run by Archimedes Global, and which is a firm that had shared staffers with executives with Cambridge Analytica. Uh, and so there was an array of things on top of everything else he'd already done that had ruffled feathers, and he explained on the St. Unger on the Young Turks about a month before. He was talking about how he explained that he had been under surveillance, vis-a-vis talking to me. He kind of downplayed that but mentioned at the end of the interview that he had been told by some special forces contacts that he himself was under surveillance, which was demonstrated, of course, as well in my
yeah.
gag order hearing, public court hearing, where the FBI agents in my case admitted, listed him publicly as someone they were interested in. And anyway, so he there's a number of things. He was a very proficient investigator of obscure malfeasance, and so to a fault, I suppose. So yes, that's the answer to that question.
He
And
had.
Hastings, of course, is named for him because Hastings was also, in addition to everything else, a major press critic. So when he wrote for
He
Newsweek
was.
and other outlets, and thus how we me and him met was over our mutual interest in reforming the press and perhaps bringing it to heel in some way. The media as a whole, which has it's an industry like any other. It's a powerful institution, just like any other powerful institution, and so it's subject to a lot of the same problems we see in all of those things. And that is truer and truer, becomes more evident and more frightening to the extent you see it from different angles and from within and on an ongoing basis. And so that's why Project Hastings is named for Hastings.
And I met Hastings through you. I mean, you introduced us, and we started hanging out. I've never really talked too terribly much about it, but I do honestly believe that the Brennan stuff that was being worked on is why he is no longer with us. There was a leak. There was a source, and as soon as he died, the source ran away and disappeared as quick as possible. I have no idea if the source is still alive or not. I had one conversation with that person. It was through a voice changer over a phone that I damn well know was a burner. But it was about the Brennan stuff, and so I'm personally, this is my personal opinion, but I'm positive it was over the Brennan stuff. There was more to be done there, and Barrett was in a bit of a situation where, you having much to do with some of it was going to be a little more complicated than me, so he was coming out to visit so we could work on a little of it before he was then supposed to be going over to Europe to actually not release anything until he was not within these borders, and he had only told a few of us that. Not, I don't know if he was going to stay there or whatnot. He hadn't like said, "Oh yeah, I'm leaving for good." He just had said he was going to go dark, when the stuff came out. But knowing who was following him and what they were planning on doing, I don't know that he would have pulled off going dark anyways. I mean, they would have gotten him in Europe too.
Yeah, knowing who his editor was and so forth, there was no reason to expect he would have been well protected or well provided for, just like he wasn't
Yeah,
to begin with. And it would, so versus Ben Smith, who's now at the New York Times, now their media critic.
yeah,
Back when he's at BuzzFeed. So it's one of those things that we're trying to create a world and an infrastructure and a milieu, that's how it's pronounced, in which that kind of thing doesn't just go ignored and unused and kind of and squandered. Same thing with the Swartz project. We're trying to make use of the information that is available to this vast trove of people. Trying to get it integrated, trying to get it in a position where it can have an impact that it should, that it doesn't, because our institutions have failed us and will continue to fail us so long as we fail our institutions. And try to create an environment in which that kind of thing is no longer just something one has to speculate about years after the fact, in ways that just there's no point in trying to amplify. So until the press is reformed, until law enforcement feels constrained in its actions against activists and researchers and journalists, and until their cooperators feel the same way, and until intelligence community and its contractors and those involved in some other way with it have some reason not to do the things that are going to make it impossible to restore our civilization into something ethical and worthwhile. Until those things happen, we're not going to have the progress that people, I think, in many cases have forgotten is possible. And so hopefully as we start to get retread and revamped in the coming weeks and months, start scoring successes again, we can recreate the kind of world that we used to live in, thinking it was quite terrible, and perhaps avert a much worse world than we have entered. But yeah, there's a necessary foundation for all those things, and so I invite everyone here, and really, actually, I urge you very strongly to think very seriously about being involved in that effort, which we've
indeed
done our best to make easy for you and accessible.
People joining, people actually getting involved, just simply time. Time is important. Being able to put time in. No matter what your skill set is, it doesn't matter. Remember this with these types of projects, that your skill set is absolutely irrelevant. Whatever you can do can be used. You can come in as a guy who's only good at marketing, a girl who does graphics. You can come in as just anything. When a lot of the people showed up in the early Anon stuff, they weren't hackers. But man, did we get amazing press releases, videos, flyers, and all the other stuff that the average citizen needed to start to understand what was going on. So your skill set is always helpful. You don't have to be some super hacker or a former journalist with inside info on some organization to really have a play here. Like, please come help. We need everyone we can.
And we are able and willing and experienced in helping you to figure out what you can be doing, and we can point you in such a direction that you can see in advance what you'll be accomplishing by virtue of the work you're doing. There will be never any mysteries as to, is this making a difference? It will all be quite visible, as it has been in the past, and so you'll be able to have a hand in that. And what's more, you'll be able to effectively, improve upon your ability to intervene and to build and help others do so eventually.
And you'll build skill sets around all the people who have already done this type of stuff before and getting better and better at it. A lot of us have been through this fire, and so for the people who are around there who are the old schoolers, they're gonna be more than happy to help. show up, ask questions. I don't think anyone's ever going to think you're bothering them, until you get up to speed, right? So, in the chat, someone asked, can Tor be run on Tor IRC be run on Android? There are some clients for Tor on Android that will route all your network traffic, so then IRC clients will work fine with it. Look up just any old Tor client for Android; they work fine. Someone else in chat asks, I believe probably you, have you ever met Snowden?
No, never met him. I was asked if I wanted by his sort of the Freedom of the Press Foundation if I wanted to have a conference talk, just a private conversation with him, and I said absolutely, certainly. But I just never heard back on that. So, he's doing his thing.
He's a good conversation. I've talked to him a couple times. Some of it maybe early on, some of it maybe later, but it was fun. I've never met him in person, and that's for really obvious reasons, I would think at this point. By the time any of, let's call it R-types, knew that Snowden existed, there were problems. And you probably didn't want to get too near that fire because it was fleeing to Asia, to Russia. Like, it was, there was no meeting this person unless at this point you were willing to go hang out in Russia. And Putin and me, I don't think we get along. I don't think it'd be a good idea for me to go over there.
Shit. Yeah, me neither. Russia scares me.
Right?
Russia's always frightened me a little bit.
Only a little. Немного.
Well, I'm using classic English understatement.
Yes, you were fitting in well there.
Yeah, in some ways.
I mean, when I was there, it was definitely as scary as everyone thinks it is, but I was there in the mid-90s, and so it was, it was a little different type of scary.
But it was more fun than too.
It was a little, it was more movie entertaining type of scary, but still scary as hell than, I don't know, dystopian kind of scary with a Putin in charge. So what else? Let's see. So the idea of Pursuance is an outlet for activists to organize. So really, I mean, if you look back at the history of all the stuff that people like Barrett or me or Anonymous or online activists in general have done that has really gotten good work actually done. Like when you look at ops that have really succeeded, there is definitely a set of tools that have been used, a set of processes that have been used, and kind of organically, almost in a de facto fashion, they usually come together and look very similar in the end. When you look at what worked, it's a lot of the same mechanisms. And so Pursuance's idea is taking all that experience from all the people that have been through this and actually bringing it together as a toolkit that everyone can have access to without having to go through so many of these themselves and do it really in a way where it's organic for them. Instead, it can be handed to them and they can be told, hey, years of work, we know this works. Here's how you do this, here's how you do that. Go. And that's how I see Pursuance and its big major, help here. The thing that it's going to give us is the ability to ramp up ops faster. And the other thing that I think is really interesting about it is the built-in knowledge. Once you've used it and all of its tools, you will know those tools. You won't have to go learn a similar tool but on a different, website. There'll be a tool for that and you'll already know it. And I think that built-in knowledge is going to make things happen faster and stronger as you move through other pursuances with other people.
That and the ability to turn your idea for a system for a way of organizing people, like a search cable, Pursuances are best comparable to, turning that into a template that others can use, and then we for similar efforts, like for organizing, you have a system for how to organize people to run a neighborhood walk, garden, or whatever. Taking that, building it, and then we have a central library whereby that is then available to other people, and they can take it and modify it for their purposes. But there will be templates. There'll be sort of starter kits for different kinds of efforts, whether it be collaborative research or something more active. And so that's another big part of it. There'll be several ways in which Pursuance evolves as a polity, as a framework, as a counterweight to institutionalized corruption, and that's one of them.
Has anyone in chat ever seen Barrett not looking dramatic? Because right now, with that black background and the way the lighting works, like, this just looks dramatic. It's great. Your internet is definitely choppy outside.
That's night for you. I gotta hop off now anyway. It's actually 2 a.m. here, and
let's do one more question. One more question, which I think is an important one for you to answer. Are you ready for it?
Yeah, absolutely.
What sorts of things do you do to keep your mental health? With some of the ops and projects you've all been involved in, I'm sure you've had many nights wondering if your life was in danger. How do you handle that level of stress?
Well, the stress really comes from any sense of danger more as it does from just watching things not happen as they should, being frustrated by that. The things I do to alleviate that and deal with it, I've spent a good deal of time just relaxing and, just involved in hobbies and so forth, mostly, gaming or AR related, just my little interests here, there, and reading. And I spend as little time as I can working. Luckily, the projects I'm doing for money are the kind that just, they're not resource time intensive. They're just creativity intensive. So I can spend several hours a day playing video games, drinking tea, and doing nothing at all. And then, spend 1 or 2 hours, on a lucky day, sometimes more, working on actual things. That energizes me so that things get done as best they can in a difficult environment.
Yeah, I mean, my answer is a little simpler than that. My life has been this way since very early. Some of the stuff you find out from actually Barrett's new book that's coming, and some of it you find out from other interviews I've done. But I grew up the son of a criminal. And I can remember being 4 years old in the backseat of a car as guns were being shot by a security guard because my uncle had just robbed the bank. So I have a long life of learning to not pay attention to that. It was kind of beat into me at a young age, and so my sense of self-preservation, that thing in you that keeps you from doing something that might end up in death, doesn't seem to really be there. So I don't get as stressed and paranoid in those situations. I kind of sickeningly get more energized and more capable to do things when that's the case. And I think that probably just comes from my really fucked up childhood.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think, easier to do very solid, important, well thought out work when one is under duress of some sort.
Yeah.
Luxury and so forth, that's the real enemy.
I agree. I think I get the most good work done when I'm also, off to the side wondering where rent's coming from, because I'm like, well, you know what? It actually makes me procrastinate on the thing I'd want to get done more. Like, I'm doing that more than even working on, paying the rent, because, I don't want to worry about that. So, all the various stressors in my life just make me get more good work done, I think. Which I know is strange, but, it just seems to be how my head works. So, maybe that's a piece of, being me or Barrett or whatever that happens to be.
That's how Dostoevsky worked. He wrote The Gambler or something else, in 3 or 4 nights to more quickly pay off his pressing gambling debts.
Yeah.
And so it's probably not a fun way of living.
No.
That kind of
I have a copy
drama.
of that. I have a second edition of that over on the shelf.
Second edition? Okay, no shit. Well,
yeah. Second edition first printing. It's sitting over there. I got a box of books from an old family member who passed away, and there's some pretty cool shit in there, actually.
There always is. That's where books from prisons
There's
come
the
from.
one I had to get rid of because I didn't want it on my bookshelves. And it was a Rudyard Kipling book. And there was a period there where all of his books were printed in Germany during the war. There's no, that can just go. So the second I got the box, I was like, no. Yeah.
The roller tripling didn't age well.
No, not at
Didn't
all.
start out that well either.
Well, no. I mean, there wasn't much good there. Yeah, so I guess, Barrett said he needed to take off. We've been going for a little more than an hour now, and do you guys have any other questions before we let the man go to bed? Lots of love in the chat. Lots of people happy you came out, wondering when you'll come back. I mean, it's only been a couple weeks, guys, or wait, has it? No, it's been a couple months, I guess. I don't know. I always feel like you're just like one of my best friends out there, right? So like, I just feel like we're in sync. So I never remembered that it has been actually like 2 months since we did this.
Well, we chat on Signal.
We do.
We're always in each other's arms. So.
Oh, how beautiful. How well said. Oh. All right. Yeah, okay. I think that's going to be us tonight, man. Have a good night's sleep, all that fun stuff, and we'll talk tomorrow.
Thank you much for having me on. And thanks everybody for their interest in these subjects. They're important.
Join the IRC. I have pasted the link yet again. Join our Discord for our show. Follow, subscribe. For everyone who actually subscribes, I get to eat more food, and that's kind of nice because I don't like being hungry. So, hit that button. Everyone else, we will see you in a couple days with our next guest. All right. Good night, everyone.